Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again. Everybody's favorite video on the YouTube, iHeartSports Power Rankings. And guys, this week was pretty crazy. We'd been seeing the power rankings be pretty stale for the past couple weeks, not a lot of movement. But I think there was quite a bit of movement this week. And the playoff races, they're getting even closer. I didn't think that was possible. Some teams pretty much blowing where they were in the playoffs. Like they had a playoff secure for what felt like months. Now they're potentially at risk, and other teams coming out of nowhere where we thought playoffs were no chance. I'm pretty sure a couple weeks ago I was talking about a couple teams having no chance. Now they're less than 5 games out. So we're going to jump into it, and it's a little bit of a shake-up. The bottom row, pretty much the same. So we're going to start with that. Not a lot of movement there, and honestly, it's probably not going to move too much the rest of the season. But we do have a new bottom team. It's the Washington Nationals, 0-1 against Miami. They played Monday. They went 1-2 against Philadelphia, and then they got swept by the Braves. So they lost all 3 series to division foes over the past 3 series, and I think they picked up 1 win, and that was against the Phillies. They got a long way to go in their division. They're clearly the worst team, and I don't really see the road going forward. They're going to have to really rebuild the farm system, all that stuff. Ever since they won the World Series, they gave up a lot for it. They've been falling down from there. Number 29, we got Oakland A's, 2-1 against Toronto, 1-2 against Houston. Just a 500 week, but better than the Nationals. And I don't know what else to really say. Honestly, the A's, rough season. But they beat the Jays, so something to be proud of there. Next up, number 28, Cincinnati Reds, 1-2 against the Mets, 1-1 against Pittsburgh. They had a little midweek session there. And over the weekend, 3-0 against Tampa Bay Rays. 2 of those coming in extra innings where they won that in extras. But the Reds playing spoiler at this point. Playoffs, long way out of it. Rebuild time for them. All the talk around the Reds is what are they going to do at the trade deadline? If you have any ideas for that, drop it in the comments below. Other than that, Reds, not a whole lot going on. Next up, 27, Kansas City Royals, 1-3 against Houston. And playing spoiler, that's pretty much going to be the role of all these teams in the bottom, to play spoiler. And they went 2-1 against Cleveland, one of those teams that had a rough week. But Royals showing some signs. Like the pitchers, they're having some of their star young pitchers showing that they can do it. And they struggled against a tough team like the Astros, but that's going to be expected, and not a whole lot else to say. Number 26, Pittsburgh Pirates, 1-1 against the Yankees, 1-1 against Cincinnati. And then they beat Milwaukee over the weekend, 2-1. So the Pirates they've just been a wild team this year. Can't really put my finger on it because some series they come to play, and they play their division pretty tough for the most part. Brewers, they played tough this year. The Cubs, they've played tough this year. But then you see them just throw up goose eggs constantly in series. So not much to say after that. They're not competing for a playoff spot. The outlook for them in coming to the division, it's a long one. It's going to be a tough rebuild, but everyone's liking watching Cruz play. And yeah, we're going to see what that's all about. Number 25, moving up a little bit, Detroit, 4-0 against Cleveland. They went 2-2 against the White Sox. They played 8 games this week, a doubleheader in there. Sweeping the Guardians, really putting their stamp in there, and they had a little bit of a streak going there for a little while. I think they went like 9-1 in a 10-game span, something like that. So they did move up. I think we had them even lower for a little while, but it's tough to get them out of this bottom row because for the most part, the Tigers are just going to play spoiler the rest of the year. But they are tough. They are a tough team. They have some decent pitching. They have some decent bats. So teams, when they play against the Tigers, should not take them lightly at all. Really, you can say that against most of these teams, but you should beat up on them. If you're going to be a playoff team, you got to win the series against them. That's for sure. 24, Arizona, 2-1 against San Fran, and then they lost to Colorado 3-1 this weekend. Arizona, they have a couple star pitchers on there. Gallen, Bumgarner's been pretty good. Morel Kelly's been pretty solid. They just can't seem to put it all together. They did have a little bit of a streak going at one point in the season, but it's not very long. Division's very tough. They got San Fran, Dodgers, Padres, and Colorado. They lost 3-1. So a lot of work to be done. They're probably the worst team in this division. and don't see that changing anytime soon. It's going to be a battle between them and Colorado the rest of the year for the basement. Number 23, Chicago Cubs. 2-1 against Milwaukee. And right now, as I'm filming this, I forgot to say this at the top, the Boston Red Sox Yankees game's just getting started. I like to do this video now before that game, the last Sunday night game goes. Cubs and Dodgers are still playing. It's been such a wild game. There's been like 18 runs in the first 5 innings, something like that. They've already lost all 3 games to the Dodgers. One of them was a blown game where they were up 3-0 late. But the Cubs, I expect them to lose this one, so it's not going to change too much of the power rankings, at least for that. So I'll start with power rankings before that game's over. Cubs, 23. Rough series. Dodgers really had it. Bullpen fell apart. They've had some good signs, young guys stepping up, but long season for them. 22. We've got the LA Angels, 1-1 against Miami, 0-4 against Baltimore. I had to check that for a second. I forgot who I put down there. Angels. Say this every week now. They're just atrocious. They got swept by the Orioles. They went 1-1 against Miami, and they're out of the playoffs. There's too many teams now at this point for them to hop, and they're just, it's like one of those things when your confidence as someone is just shot, and unless they go on, they need to pick up a couple double-digit win streaks going, and they definitely have to beat the teams in their division. They can't be losing to teams like the Baltimore Orioles, a team that last season everyone was beating up on, and even at one point in this season, the Orioles were something like 20 games back from their division, it feels like, and the Angels got swept. So long step ahead. I think they got 4 teams ahead of them now that they would have to pass to even be in the playoff hunt. So yeah, 21, Colorado Rockies, 0-3 against the Dodgers, 3-1 against Arizona. They've been pretty happy to see Chris Bryant come back, so he's back in the lineup, so they're starting to feel a little confident. He's been playing pretty solid for them, and I just think on paper overall too, they're much better than Arizona. I think they just need that little bit of extra pieces to go their way in order to take a step forward. I think next year though, keep your eye on this team. They could have a lot of potential in this division. San Francisco seems to be sliding down. Padres and Dodgers, can they stay that good forever? Maybe the Padres can. The Dodgers seem to be pretty stacked for a long time, but we'll see. Keep your eye on this team. I think this is pretty much where the lowest point is. You can see them making some steps forward. It's going to be tough this year because, of course, they're pretty far behind division-wise. Number 20, one of the biggest fallers of the week. Cleveland, 0-4 against Detroit. 1-2 against Kansas City, losing against 2 division foes that are supposed to be much weaker than them, and that has been what Cleveland has been like feasting on for the most part of the season so far, is those teams below them in their division. They were at one point, I think it was like 1 or 2 days they were leading the division. It's just been falling out ever since then, and Guardians pretty much falling out of the playoff race. Same kind of story as the Angels. At least they have a little bit more life. I will say that. They have more life. They're less games back. They're actually theory in a playoff race, but I'm having a hard time seeing it myself just based on their team. Number 19, we got Texas Rangers, 0-3 against Baltimore, 2-1 against Minnesota. So kind of hinted at it when I was talking about Cleveland, but the playoff race just blown up this week, and it really starts here, especially in the American League. These teams, it's a lot of teams in this race, and we're in July. That extra playoff game that they've added this year is not extra game, but extra playoff team. It's just really opened up the door for so many teams, Texas being one of them. Again, they lost a series to the Orioles, a team that they're going to have to be able to beat if they're going to be a playoff team, and they got swept, so a little bit of danger there. But they've taken some steps. They're kind of been floating around sub 500, but like 500 in terms of run differential they've been in there. They seem to have a big mix of some decent pitching and some pitching that doesn't get done. The bats have been hot, at least for the last while. Started the season very cold. Texas, going to be a team got to keep your eye on going down the stretch here. Number 18, Chicago White Sox, 1-2 against Minnesota, 2-2 against Detroit. So Chicago had a rough stretch there. Ton of injuries they were dealing with, but they're back per se. They're in the race, and they're a much better team than they had performed over the last 6 weeks or so. Mind you, they split the series with Detroit. They stole it from Minnesota, so you got to be pretty excited about that. but they have a long way to go, and they got to keep this up. Luckily for them, the runway's still pretty long. There's still a lot of season left, and I consider them to be in this hunt and a strong team going forward. So keep your eye on this team. Number 17, Miami Marlins, 1-0 against Washington, 1-1 in the middle of the week, and then 2-2 against the Mets over the weekend. This team has just been the definition of what I say every time I talk about the Marlins. They're the definition of 500, and they did it again this week. 4.5 games back, I believe, from a playoff spot this time. They got two teams that they're pretty much not going to be able to catch in the Braves and the Mets for the division. The Phillies, I guess, they're starting to break away a little bit too. So wild card's pretty much the only hope for the Marlins. But you're starting to see this National League East division be a strong division, except for bottom team, you know. So, again, keep your eye. But seriously, Marlins are still in the hunt. Number 16, I think this might possibly be the highest they have ever been on the channel. We have the Baltimore Orioles, 3-0 against Texas, 4-0 against the Angels, 7-game sweep this week, and they're hot. This is probably the hottest team in baseball right now, and you got to watch out. I think I was talking about it 4 weeks ago, how they had no chance, like the rest of the division was too strong, and they just kept getting beaten up, but at the same time, it was making them stronger. Well, I'm starting to think that they're strong enough, and they're really within reach of those other teams, like the Red Sox, the Rays, and the Jays. They're within reach of those teams. They're playing better baseball. Their record's a little bit worse, but if you're going to match up against those teams right now, I'm taking the Orioles, and if they keep this up, they're going to be on the board. This is playoff talk. We're talking 1, 2, 3 spots out, and the Orioles are right there. So, Orioles fans, I know you guys are ecstatic right now. You should be. The other teams are struggling, and you guys are thriving, but it's a long season. You got to keep it up. Keep it up. Number 15, San Francisco Giants, 1-2 against Arizona, 2-2 against San Diego, and it's just kind of an iffy season for them. So they managed to steal some wins along the way. So I gotta admit, they're still kind of performing a little bit stronger than I would expect, and they do take up some wins. And today's a prime example of that, where were struggling and they just laid the hammer down on the Padres. So it's what it is. I think that game's technically still going, but it was like 11-0, so I just wrapped it up. Here we are. 14, Boston Red Sox, 1-2 against Tampa, 1-2 against the Yankees so far. They're playing tonight, and they're about to start the game. If they take that big win, it's going to be huge for them, and it could very well put them in the 13th, but we're starting to see teams. This is where the thick of the playoff race is going to be, and that's where we're going to talk about right now. We got the Toronto Blue Jays right ahead of them, 1-2 against Oakland. They get swept by the Mariners this weekend. So I do have the Jays ahead of Boston because every series they've played so far, I believe, the Jays have won that series. So they got a little bit of an edge. Mind you, if they matched up today, I know they just played it maybe a week ago and the Jays took it, but I'm not super confident in the Jays, and it definitely showed with this weekend being swept by the Mariners. I said going into that weekend they need to at least win 2, and I saw the sweep come out. It's very, very disappointing. The Jays are struggling. The depth is not there. A lot of questions. I will not be surprised if we see a manager be fired soon in Toronto, because this is unacceptable. Coming into the season, they were expected to win the American League. They were the favorites in Vegas. So it's tough. It's a tough break right now. I see them potentially falling out of the playoff spot at number 13. Number 12, on fire as well. We got the Seattle Mariners, just talking about them. They swept the Blue Jays. They beat San Diego both games. So they're another team that's on fire. This American League, the teams that were kind of holding on to those playoff spots, they're struggling. The teams that were kind of way out are on fire. Mariners have had a crazy season. I think at one point they were like here, 9th maybe, early in the season. They were good, and then they just went on an atrocious downswing. But now they're coming back, and right at the right time, they're beating the teams that they need to beat to be in a playoff race. They're beating the Orioles. They're beating the Jays. I think Boston did beat them. But you know what I'm saying. They're winning the games that they need to. Keep your eye on these guys because they're fire right now. Number 11, Tampa Bay Rays, 2-1 against Boston early in the week. And then they got swept by the Reds over the weekend. just not a series that they were looking to lose all the games on, and at least wanted to pick up at least one win. Lost 2 of the games in extras, especially when McClanahan was on the mound. That was a tough loss. He gave up 1 home run in the whole game, went 1-1 to extras, and then they lost. Tough break there. But Tampa, I think, overall, depth-wise, they're stronger than the teams right chasing them, so I would expect them to be able to hold on to this playoff spot. But who knows? Like, baseball's a game about streaks. If they go on a losing streak and some of those other teams behind them go on winning streaks, they're out of it. Number 10, St. Louis Cardinals, 1-3 against Atlanta, 1-2 against Philly over the weekend. So those are both teams that they're basically fighting wild card spots for, because right now Milwaukee's leading the division. St. Louis is not, of course. So they're in a wild card spot. But same with those other 2 teams that they just lost to. So those are 2 teams that you could see them playing in the first round of the playoffs, should they make it. So tough losses there, and puts them on the outside in a playoff spot, but on the weaker side of the playoffs. Number 9, Philadelphia Phillies, 2-1 against Washington, 2-1 against Cardinals. I think this is the highest we might have had them all season. They've kind of broken out of the curse of the 500. They've been like 500 for years, but they're starting to put some games behind them. And I think they're a strong team. They got a strong batting order. We all know that. And their pitchers are starting to really get it done. Kyle Gibson had a good outing this week. Wheeler had an amazing outing this week. So they played some very low-scoring games against the Cardinals over the weekend. Playoff-style baseball. I think they won 1-0, 2-0, and lost 4-3. So gotta be excited. Phillies fans, looks like you're on your way to the playoffs, but you got to keep this up. And it's a tough division. So wild card's pretty much what you would expect, I think. Unless some craziness happens. But at this point, I think it's wild card. Number 8, Minnesota, 2-1 against the White Sox, 1-2 against Texas. So it's a 500 week. But the division is in their favor, and they did beat the White Sox. So the White Sox are the team that I would suspect has the best chance to catch them. They're in 18th. They're a ways behind, and they struggle a lot from the season. And even as they started to come back a little bit this week, Minnesota still managed to beat them. However, they're only .550. Their win percentage is no better than some of these teams below them. They do have the benefit of the division, so that's why they are a little bit higher. And you would suspect the division, they're going to pick up better wins against these weaker teams to make their overall wild card race a little bit stronger, should it come to that. But we do need to see someone like the White Sox or the Guardians somehow turn it around and really just steamroll here while the Twins start to struggle. Number 7, Milwaukee Brewers, 1-2 against the Cubs, 1-2 against Pittsburgh. Weak division, and they're losing both series. A little bit scary there, and they're really close to falling. If they have a bad week, we could see them in the 10 range, and we could see the Cardinals, Milwaukee it's kind of weird. It could mirror the Central on the other side, as the weakest division, and the division leaders barely wild card teams, should that not be the case. Only difference here is that we got 2 teams really close, whereas the other one we do not. Number 6, holding on to it, San Diego, 0-2 in Seattle, and then 2-2 over the weekend against San Fran. San Diego's been holding on to this top row for a little while. Been questioning it, to be honest, whether they should really be in it. But they are the best record in the wild card in the National League. And when I start to look at teams below them in the National League, I can't really give them the edge yet. But a week or 2 from now, after the All-Star break, very well could see a new 6th spot here. But for now, I think the top 5 are in a league of their own. And number 6 is where we start to go from 6 to 12, 16. It's all really a crapshoot. It's all a win streak away from jumping up 5, 6, 10 spots. Number 5, Atlanta, 3-1 against St. Louis, 3-0 against Washington, and they've just been great the past month. And ex-World Series team, they're starting to get into full form here, and honestly, watch out New York Mets. They're right on your tail at number 4, 2-1 against Cincinnati, 2-2 against Miami. I'm excited to see when the Mets and Braves play next, because it's going to be a good series. Could very well see the division switch hands if in the next month or so. Don't be surprised if that happens, but also don't be surprised if the Mets go on a run of their own here. Both teams are very good, I think, And as much as the Mets had that long cushion, they didn't really run away with it when they were given the chance. So now the Braves they're closing that gap. Number 3, LA Dodgers, 3-0 against Colorado, 3-0 against the Cubs, and I believe they're going to win tonight. I can't see the score from here, but we suspect they will. Dodgers running hot. That's just, I can't put them ahead of these 2 next teams yet, mainly because number 2, I still got them. You guys might not be agreeing with this, but I got number 2 at the New York Yankees. 1-1 against Pittsburgh, 2-1 against Boston. If they lose today, I'll be 2-2 against Boston. Overall in the week so far, 3-2. Whereas number 1, we got Houston, 3-1 against Kansas, 2-1 against Oakland. They lost a game. They didn't sweep both their games. They didn't sweep a series, but they did win both. And overall, they went 5-2 on the week. And I'm still kind of holding it. Like, Houston beat the Yankees in those series they played a couple weeks ago. I'm still kind of holding on to that. I know the Yankees have the better record. I get it. But guys, like, when it comes down to playoff baseball, you got to be able to go the depth. You got to be able to score runs against good pitchers. You got to be able to have your bullpen hold leads and close out games. And when they met each other within the past 2 weeks, that did not happen. And Houston had bested them. And I think right now that gives Houston the right to be number 1. But mind you, it's a thinnest of values there. But there you guys have it. The power rankings heading into All-Star break a week and a half from now. And guys, I'm not going to be doing the power rankings for the next 2 weeks. So you're going to have a 2-week break of my nonsense. Make sure you subscribe to make sure when I come back. But I am going away on my honeymoon/vacation. We're going to Las Vegas. Drop a comment, blah, 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 if you want to meet up, whatever. But yeah, there you guys have it. Thanks for watching. We will see you guys next time.